Welcome. It's really good to see you. Glad that we've got a group that's still sticking with it, because I've got lots of information I'd like to share with you, and today I'm going to talk to you about the China study. Now, this is, I've just got to put my thing on. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not really a tech person. It's really good to have some people around who understand what they're supposed to do. Okay, now last class, I spoke to you about the 8 laws of health. Now, they are laws that I believe are so simple, yet so profound. Okay, and if you wanted to find out about them, remember you can check online, because this is all being recorded and it is going to be online. I'm not sure. We've had a little bit of hiccups with some of the recordings, but they'll be online soon. Okay. So anyhow, nutrition. And if you remember last week, I spoke to you about, last class, I spoke to you about nutrition, and I believe the optimum nutrition we should be having is a whole food, plant-based diet. Now, and I've explained to you last time that some people call me a vegan vegetarian, which I would say, yes, I am, but it probably helps you if you have a whole food, plant-based diet, because you can be a vegan vegetarian and you can eat donuts, you can eat all these sort of things, and you can have sweets and things like that. So whole food, plant-based diet, and so you're not having any of your refined foods. Okay, now why become vegetarian? What are the advantages? And is eating meat and dairy a valid option, or should we avoid them completely? By the way, Ralph, I don't have any picture on my monitor here at the moment. Okay, thank you. That does help. Okay, should we eat meat? Okay, now I spoke to you last time about it. Now I want to share some interesting information. I believe vegetarians have an advantage, and I'll tell you why, and we're going to go through it as we talk today. I wrote this up some years ago, and I have this particular talk summed up, and that's in one of my newsletters. So you can just go onto my website and you can download this one. This particular one is called the Vegetarian Advantage. So you'd need to go on there and you'd need to find this one, because it's quite an interesting one. I can remember, and it's about the China study. Now, I can remember it was really hot. It was in between Christmas and New Year's Day. One year, I can't remember what year it was, but it was so hot. But this book turned up probably just at Christmas, so I thought, look, I'm going to sit down and read it. And as I read it, I thought, I am so excited. I really am so thankful that I came across this book. I have been a vegetarian and have been probably for over 40 years now. I first became a lacto-ovo vegetarian, then I became a vegan vegetarian 30 plus years ago. But I just was told, and I believed it was good. But when I read the China study, it just added some extra, it's scientific credentials to our diet, and I wanted to share with you with it. Now, this is written by Dr. Colin Campbell, and also his son, Thomas Campbell. Now, who is Dr. Colin Campbell? Well, he has been in the forefront of nutrition research in America for over 50 years. Now, he's retired now. He's probably well in his 80s at this stage, so he's well and truly retired. But back in the late 90s, or in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, he was working on a lot of cancer research in America. He would have been one of the top cancer researchers in America. He worked as a professor emeritus of nutritional biochemistry at Cornell University. Now, Cornell University actually put his course out online, and you can do his course, which fills in extra gaps to the China study, and I was actually fortunate enough to do this, and I've gained extra information as well as what is in his book. This is the book which is online, which I'm showing on screen, but the China study is an excellent book. Okay. Dr. Campbell has authored more than 300 research papers. Now, by authoring them, he actually did the experiments. Okay, he was funded. He had millions of dollars funding. He could run experiments anywhere, so he had plenty of funding. He was funded for 27 years by the National Institute for Cancer Research and American Institute for Cancer Research. So he was funded for years, and in 1998 he awarded the American Cancer Research Award for his work on cancer. So that's just some background on him, right? Early in his career, he was sent to the Philippines to find out why quite a number of the children were getting liver cancer. Now, some of these children who were getting liver cancer were as young as 4. Now, liver cancer is normally a cancer for adults, older people. Children, he couldn't believe it. He said, why are these children getting liver cancer? Now, his background, he was a dairy farmer. He was raised on a dairy farm, so he actually thought, well, milk, just give them some milk. So what he decided to do when he went there, and he's the actual scientist who discovered dioxin and also aflatoxin. Have you ever heard of aflatoxin? Well, he is the scientist. Now, aflatoxin is a very, very carcinogenic toxin, and it's a mold fungus, and it's commonly found on peanuts and corn. Now, the children in the Philippines were actually having a lot of peanut butter. So he thought, so they're having a lot of peanut butter, so maybe it was the peanut butter that they were having, and he found that they were mainly rich families too. The children, the poorer people weren't getting the liver cancer. But then he heard some research from India, which really caused him to decide to study further. The Indian report says, no, it's not that. It's animal protein caused cancer. Now, this threw him to a complete loop because he is, as I said, his background was dairy and plenty of dairy and more dairy. And so he just realised this and he thought, just doesn't add up. So what he decided to do, and he, as I said, he had the funding, he wanted to study the biochemical details of cancer formation. He wanted to investigate the role on nutrition, especially protein in cancer development. And he wanted to know whether protein promotes cancer, and he wanted to know how protein promotes cancer. So he did some experiments. He had 2 groups of rats. All of the rats were given aflatoxin. Remember, aflatoxin is this carcinogenic mold fungus. So the whole lot of them were given the aflatoxin. In the first group, he fed them 20% protein in the form of casein. Now, if you know, casein is milk protein. So he gave them 20% of casein. This group he gave 5% of protein, casein protein. Now, normally, he said that the casein, that 20% is a very normal dose that he would give them. It's just what we would eat. Most people could very easily eat 20% protein. So it wasn't an abnormal amount, it was just an average amount for the rats. But he couldn't believe it. These 20%, these 5%, every single one of these rats got cancer and none of these got cancer. He had never ever had 100% to 0 result in his laboratory tests before. And this concerned him. And it threw him in a real quandary. And then he said, in his book, it says there is an enzyme in the liver, and it's called MFO. I can't remember what it's called, but it is responsible to detoxify chemicals and drugs. Now, when I read that, I thought, this is all experiments on rats at this stage. So I emailed the tutor in the course to make sure. I said, now, this is in the book, it says there's an enzyme. I said, but it's not clear if it's an enzyme in rats or humans. And she told me, and she emailed me back and said, no, it's in humans too. Humans have this enzyme in their liver that can either detoxify it or activate it. It's a paradox because it can work either way. What determines which way this enzyme will work? Animal protein. The amount of protein we eat modifies enzyme activity. Now, foci, and I looked it up there and I thought, how do you pronounce this word, foci? But I found out you can pronounce it a lot of different ways. Okay, but they are precursor clusters of cells that predict tumour growth. So you don't have to cancer researchers don't have to have the full-blown cancer. They just can predict the moment that cluster of cells appears, they know that that is going to form a cancer tumour. So, and he said, and he found out that foci development was almost entirely dependent on how much animal protein was consumed, regardless of how much aflatoxin was consumed. Just lost my control here. I'll have to put it in my pocket. Low protein diets inhibited the initiation of cancer by aflatoxin. So remember, they were all given aflatoxin, and yet the ones who had the higher levels of protein got cancer, but the ones with the low levels didn't get cancer. Now that was aflatoxin. Aflatoxin, I said, is a fungal toxin, fungal carcinogen. But did you know that viruses also can produce and cause cancer? Viruses can insert a genetic code into the DNA of cells which is passed on to the next generation. Now, maybe you've heard of it. You've heard of some people say, oh, look, I've got the cancer gene. I have a cancer gene. My mother had it. My grandmother had it. My sisters have it. So I have the breast cancer gene. And some of them, we know, even decide, well, that they maybe even have a mastectomy because that'll stop them getting cancer. But just want you to think what this is saying here. Those with virus-induced genes only develop tumours if they gave them 14 to 22% animal protein. So he was working this in a number of different levels. He was on the fungus toxin to promote cancer, now a virus. And remember, the virus will actually change you and you will get the gene, so-called gene. So if we have, and this is his summary, if we have genes for cancer, we can use nutrition to control the expression of these genes. Now, I want you to think about that. He likened cancer growth to when you grow a lawn. Okay, now when you grow a lawn, you throw your lawn seeds out. Okay, that is called the initiation in cancer cells, in cancer terms. Okay, but then in the lawn, then your grass will start to grow. If you give your seeds the right conditions, if you maybe water them and you give them sunlight and they've got nutrition, they've got fertilizer or whatever you've got, the grass seeds will grow. And then the grass takes over, it grows out of control, which is called the progression. Now let's look at the 3 stages to cancer. Initiation, okay? That is when seeds are planted by chemicals called carcinogens. And they are byproducts of industrial processes. Seeds can be planted by aflatoxin, by poor nutrition, by viruses, by stress and excessive radiation, whether it's sun or radioactive, or, like your EMFs or your mobile phone towers and all that type of radiation. So that is how the cancer seeds get planted in our bodies. So we have carcinogens, they are initiated. They're the seeds. But what causes the promotion is when the body is given the right condition for cancer cells to grow and take hold, is high animal protein. And this stunned him. He went over and over and over and over it again. Because then that's what happens is a progression. Cancer cells invade other tissues and they metastasize. Do you know, as I said, he went over this again. He actually decided to get other laboratories to repeat this study. Maybe he did something wrong. He did it again and again. He knew that if he was going to put out a book like this, he had to have his science so watertight that no one could contradict what he was saying. And it was repeated on numerous times, and the same thing. That they had the same conclusions as he did, over and over again. It wasn't the actual seeds that caused the cancer, it was giving them the right conditions for them to grow. Now, this is something else that he was just totally stunned with. Remember, you've got the 2 groups. He said during animal experiments, the foci development could be reversed up or down. Your cancer cells could be switched off. So he would have the 20% and the 5% animal protein. So he switched them and he changed this and he gave them 5% and these 20%. And he said all of these with 5%, all of their cancer foci cells switched off, these switched on. Then he decided to go back the other way. And guess what? Exactly the same thing again. These switched on and these switched off. And he said he could just change the doses of the animal protein. And remember, this is milk protein. And he could just change it and their cancer cells would switch on and off. He was stunned. But he says the body can remember early carcinogen insults. These cells may remain dormant but can be reawakened by bad nutrition later. So, have you ever heard of people who have decided they've got cancer and they decide to go on a really super duper cleanse, they've juiced, they do put all the nutrition in? And I've heard of somebody who was doing this, and I've heard of different people, but there's one particular one I'm thinking of this man. He did exactly that. He went on a high juices, he did all the right thing, but then the moment he was told his cancer had gone, guess what? I'll go back to my old lifestyle now. I can eat what I used to eat. And guess what? The cancer comes back so fast. Have you ever heard, and I've heard a number of people who have been involved with this, helping people get rid of cancer, if it comes back with a vengeance. Vengeance is very quick. It's like you've had one chance, and if you just decide to go back to your old lifestyle, you will get the cancer back and it'll take over very, very quickly. And I can still remember I had a woman come to visit me, and she'd had inoperable brain cancer in the middle of her brain. And she did all what I've told you about last time, the 8 laws of health. Plus she did herbs, she did water treatments, she did lots and lots of things like that. And she was cured. And it was inoperable. She only had like 6 months to live. And she's still alive today. But she came to my house, she scrutinized me, and she made sure. She said, now what's in this? What's in this? I want to know every ingredient that's in the recipes. I want to know. And I said, I put this and this and this. Okay, that's all right. But then something, no, I'm not having any of that. She was so fussy. And she said, you know what? And she was actually a naturopath. And she said, do you know? She said, I know that when cancer cells will come back, they will come back with a vengeance, and they will very quickly. Now, a normal rat's life is 2 years. But what he found, this is amazing, he says all rats were given, remember they were all given aflatoxin, but the rats given 5% casein protein were all alive, they were active and had sleek coats. But the rats given 20% casein protein were all dead or nearly dead. And I believe this is why. You'll find people who have a high animal protein diet get very acidic in their body, because high animal protein is very acidic. And guess where that acid lodges? In your bones, in your joints, and you get sort of, you find people, they walk around, they may be 40 or 50 years old, and they're just walking like this. They're not at all supple. They can't move. They've got no movement in them because they're acidic. And yet these rats, they were very agile. Now if you think of that of people who are on this sort of diet are very active. You're not like crippled up with arthritis. But the rats given 20% casein protein all were dead or nearly dead. Now, he decided to change the 20% animal protein and substitute with 20% plant protein. He used soy protein and gluten protein. But the plant protein did not promote cancer growth even at the higher levels of intake. Now, this is a quote by Colin Campbell. According to traditional regulatory criteria, casein is the most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered. Now, this was research from multiple different perspectives, published in the best cancer journals. So can you understand that why, when he was set the task by the American government to find the cause of cancer, he came back and he found the cause of cancer, and when he told them what it was, they wouldn't listen to him. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. Can you imagine what would happen to the dairy industry? Could you imagine what would happen to the cancer industry? So he published his own book. And as you know, that's why. He wanted to get this out. And even now, to this day, he's well in his 80s and he's still very vocal. You can hear him. He's got quite a few YouTube clips on the internet where you can listen to him. And yeah, he's still very sure. And he actually changed later on, as he was learning all this. He himself became a vegan vegetarian. But he coined the words plant-based, whole food plant-based, and I actually like that because then it just shows you're looking for the whole food. You're not going to get any of the refined foods. So then began the China study. Now up till this time, he'd only done his research on rats and I think mice as well. They were only on the animals. But he decided he needed to find out if this is the same with people. So in the 1970s, the then Premier of China was dying of liver cancer. And he decided to give the Chinese people a legacy. He would they went throughout China and they did surveys on cancer research. Now, he had 880 million people surveyed. They said it's the most people surveyed ever in the world. 880, nearly all of China was surveyed. They had 650,000 workers, showed where certain types of cancers were high and where they were non-existent. But what he found, there were massive variations in cancer or rates across China. He couldn't believe this. He said to himself, this is just not right. Why on earth? Why is there such variations across China? And this is like the Chinese produced the Cancer Atlas of China. And this is like a map of China and it was colour-coded in different areas. This particular map showed the occurrence of stomach cancer. And then they had another map that showed the occurrence of liver cancer. And this one's lung cancer and breast cancer and all that. And he was amazed. There were pockets all over the place. Why on earth would you have a pocket of people here who had a lot of breast cancer, but over there they didn't have as much? This just puzzled him. So he looked further and he said cancer was geographically localised and was the result of environmental and lifestyle factors, not genetics. Because all Chinese have the same genes. So they can't say it's genetic. It's like for us here, we've got so many different ethnic groups that have come into our country, so we haven't got pure like genes like the Chinese do. But the ranges of cancer rates were remarkable. In some places there were 10, 20, 100 or even 400 times differences across China. In USA, cancer rates are much higher overall, but they have a much less difference rate, 2 or 3 times from one part of the country to the other. But 100 to 400 times? Can you imagine if you knew that you were living in a certain village in China, that you had 100 or 400 times the chance of catching lung cancer as if you didn't live over there? It just didn't make sense to him. And in America, it has nowhere near. As I said, they only have 2 to 3 times the difference rate. I heard some years ago there was a building in Melbourne that they had 4 times the cancer rate, and there's people in it didn't want to work in it anymore, and I think they were going to pull it down or something like that because people wouldn't work there. But yet, if in China they had such different rates. So then he decided to go in and do what is called the China study. He wanted to take all this information that he'd worked out and he'd learned about the rats and find out if it worked the same with the human population. So he selected 6,500 adults, and this began in 1983. And so it was conducted in the 80s and in the 90s, right through, and there has even been follow-up programs done in recent years, and I can't tell you the years, but even in not so long ago, they were still doing some follow-up work in China with them. But they had a wide variety of variables were studied. So they studied blood, urine, food samples, nutrients, toxic chemicals, pesticides, hormones, viruses, geography, reproductive. So if it was a woman or a man, was she in her reproductive years, or is she an older woman? Is she menstruating? Is she breastfeeding? They found out all of these things. What they ate, their lifestyle. Over 1,000 pieces of information on each person in total were collected. Now, why was rural China chosen? And I do know, and he admits, he says, China nowadays is a little bit different than it was when he was doing this. They spend their lives in the same area and they eat the same locally grown foods during their lives. Diets in one area of China varied considerably from one region to the other, and villages in the mountains may rely on steamed bread and sweet potatoes, but just 30 kilometres away they may rely on rice. So there was really quite a wide variety of their diets. He found there was different disease groupings. One he called diseases of affluence, which are nutritional extravagances, like, for instance, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, obesity. Now, we in Australia have mostly diseases of affluence. We wouldn't have many diseases of poverty. There possibly are some, but that is your nutritional inadequacy and poor sanitation, like that he found in the poorer counties, which are pneumonia, parasitic disease, rheumatic heart disease, diseases of pregnancy, etc. So we're talking about the diseases of affluence here. And it was the survey areas near the large Chinese cities that showed the higher rates of the rich diseases. Why? Because as they become more affluent, the Chinese are beginning to eat diets richer in oils and animal products. In Shanghai and Beijing, eating meat has acquired a certain social prestige. So they're changing their diets, and even now, you've heard they've even have fast foods in outlets in China too. So it's not like it was probably back there in the time when they did the China study. And this is, remember, rural China, so they wouldn't have much influence from the cities at this stage. And he found, this was his summary, that disease was linked to diet. For instance, as breast cancer increases, dietary fat intake went up. When people moved from one country to another, if they changed their diets from their traditional diet to the Western diet of their adopted country, they took on the cancer risks of diseases of the new country. Now, we know that, for instance, you have, after the war, a lot of Japanese moved to Hawaii. And at first, the Japanese kept their traditional diets, but not long after that, they actually changed and they adopted the diet of the American diet in Hawaii. And guess what? They got the diseases of the Americans. Over and over, it was proved that cancer was an environmental disease and has an important dietary links. Now, this is something else he found, that the strongest predictor of Western disease is blood cholesterol. In rural China, levels were 3.27. Now, that's quite low. But as blood cholesterols decreased across China, so did cancers of the liver, rectum, colon, lung, breast, leukemia, brain, stomach, and esophagus. Even though meat consumption is low, 7 grams a day, this amount still raised the risk of cancer. I'm going to ask you, how much is 7 grams of 7 grams of meat? It's a tiny amount. Do you know, I looked into the supermarket and I found there was a little patty there, 2 little patties, and it said 60 grams. And I thought, well, that's about 30 grams for a patty about that size. And I thought, well, if you cut that into 4, that's sort of like 7 grams. And I would say there probably would be a heaped teaspoon of meat there. That's the equivalent of 7 grams. Now, he was saying that 7 grams, about a teaspoon of meat a day, will start rising your risk for cancer. But cholesterol does not cause heart disease, we know that, but it is an indicator of the kind of diet that people are eating, for instance, in high animal protein. And it is the high animal protein that raises cholesterol levels. So fats. Even though the Chinese do not eat altered fats as Westerners, as animal-based foods intake goes up, so does breast cancer. So he was telling you that breast cancer is related to the animal protein. The fat intake is less than half that of the US, but rich animal fat diets raises hormones such as estrogen. So we know estrogen dominance is a lot of problems with your breast cancer. Hormonal level. Average age of menarche was 17 years, and they end their reproductive years 2 to 3 years earlier than Westerners. Now, can you imagine the girls here in Australia? They get their first period at age 17. That would be unheard of, wouldn't it? You'd be going to the doctor and you'd think to yourself, there's something wrong with a girl. But it's really interesting because I have got a number of people, and I've spoken to different people who are eating the same type of diet as I am eating, and they brought their children up on that diet from when they're small right through, and when the girls hit puberty, they are definitely much later in maturing, which is good because they have less exposure to their reproductive, to the estrogen. I can still remember I was teaching one day and there was a little girl 7 years old who had her periods. Now I'm asking, now that girl, she was about that much taller than the peers in her class. She was so large. Now, I didn't go to them and say to them, well, what are you doing and feeding them? But I just do know that a high-fat animal diet will promote rapid growth. So I would assume that girl has had a lot of meat, dairy, a lot of cheese. That's where that rapid growth comes from. A girl who's 7 shouldn't be worried about periods. They should be still playing with their dolls. And I found this. As I've gone throughout, and some people have talked to me, and they said to me, it's definitely diet related. They can tell. One woman she was telling me that she was from China, and she said she was Chinese. She migrated, and she could still speak the language, and she used to watch the Chinese news. And she said there was one instance of them little girls of 2 getting their periods. And she said this was in a hospital. They had this influx of all these little children, 2 years old, getting their periods, and they put it back to hormone-pumped strawberries. They were pumping the strawberries with hormones. And the boys, she said, it affected the boys in a different way. The boys had micro penises. They never grew. So this is what you're doing when you muck up all this sort of thing. Okay, but Western women have estrogen levels 50% higher than Chinese women, have more PMS and menstrual problems. They didn't talk about having any hot flushes and all that sort of thing. It's practically unheard of in China. And total estrogen exposure among Western women was 3 to 4 times higher in their lifetime. Now, high estrogen levels leads to cancer of the breast and prostate. Now, it's the same diet that will lead to women who have high estrogen. It will lead to cancer in the breast, but in men, it affects their prostate. So if you've got a husband or a male, or with prostate, you've just got to look back to the same thing you do with a woman with breast cancer. It's their diet. fibre. An average fibre intake of dietary fibre is 3 times higher than the US. But high fibre intake increases mineral absorption, and high fibre intake lowers colon and rectum cancers, as well as lowering blood cholesterol. The normal transit time from when you eat your food to you go to the toilet should be 1 day. But we know that meat eaters, their transit time is 72 hours, which is 3 days. And that's not good, because you've got all this, it's rotting in and it's fermenting, all this food that's in your colon. And that's why you have so much problems with your colon and rectal cancers, as well as lowering blood cholesterol. So once you have, and you push your food through fast, it goes through fast. That's why. Carbohydrates. The Chinese consume more calories, 30%, than the typical American, but do not gain more weight. And I liked this. Why? Calories from animal protein and fat are stored as body fat, but plant food calories are burned and lost as body heat. Isn't that good news? People want to lose weight? Well, and you can not only lose weight, you can actually eat more. And you still will gain less weight than if you ate the animal protein. Breast cancer. American women have a death rate for breast cancer 5 times higher than China. And the highest rate of breast cancer occurs in the countries where people eat the most meat. And whole food plant-based diets can largely control the playing out of any genetic tendency towards disease. Death from breast cancer is associated with high levels of dietary fat, blood, cholesterol, estrogen and testosterone, as well as an early age of the first menstruation, factors which are associated with diets high in animal-based foods. Now, I actually put this in there as I found this. This was from one of Colin Campbell's studies, and I just wanted to show you. You mightn't be able to read it clearly, but down the bottom, right down there, they have such a small amount of the bottom axis has got the grams on the every day that they have on the intake, and that's the one going up on the other side is how much breast cancer they have. So those countries that eat hardly any animal food, like El Salvador, Thailand, Ceylon, Taiwan, all the Philippines, those Central American and those Asian countries, very low in cancer, breast cancer. But you go up higher up the top, all of those countries which are like USA, Australia's pretty close to the top too, New Zealand, Denmark, Netherlands. Denmark's got a lot of animal products, and New Zealand, really, really high in animal products. So, and there's been graph after graph after graph is like this, where you see it's related to the diet. Now, in liver cancer, in areas where liver cancer was high, it was found that those infected with hepatitis B virus had a high rate of liver cancer. Now, did you know that if you have hepatitis B virus, you have a 20 to 40 times higher risk rate of getting liver cancer? 20 to 40 times. Yet in China, that an awful lot of people have got this hepatitis B and C virus. They've got 12 to 13% of the Chinese are infected. They believe it's got to do with the water, even though we mightn't like it. You know, we've got chlorine and all those things in our water and fluoride and whatever, but they may be help in this particular instance. But when those infected with hepatitis B virus ate a plant-based diet, they did not have the high cancer rates. And I've heard a lot of people who've heard of this, they have hepatitis B, they go on a plant-based diet, they have no problems. They don't get their liver cancer. Now, obesity. Those rats that were placed on the 5% protein were more active than those that were placed on the 20% protein diet. I said that before. But people who were vegetarians or vegans were 5 to 30 pounds slimmer than their fellow citizens. Now, I should have converted that over to grams, and I never thought about it. I only just realised that I didn't. But how much is 5 to 30 pounds? Well, that's 30 pounds is like 2 stone, isn't it? Animal fats increase uric acid in the body, which turn causes fatigue. Remember I said uric acid, high uric acid in your body gives you a lot of degenerative diseases. Calories. Calorie intake in China is higher than the US. More active, very low fat, 3 times the dietary fibre, low protein, yet they had lower body weight. And animal intake in USA is 10 times greater than China. The iron intake was twice as high in China, but they did have places where it was lower, and they realised it was a parasitic disease. Diabetes. The strongest association with diabetes is excess weight and high cholesterol. After 3 weeks on a vegetarian diet, type 1 diabetics are able to lower their insulin by 40% and cholesterol by 30%. Type 2 diabetics who have no pancreatic damage, 24 out of 25 were able to discontinue their insulin medication. Now, do you know, I've heard this many, many times by people who are promoting this diet and lifestyle that I'm doing. They say one of the easiest diseases to reverse is diabetes, because you ate yourself into it, you just eat yourself out of it. You got to change what you eat. And so often, they said that many times they will just take people in, and they can even just take them in within. Often people they do a 10-day fast or a 10-day change of their diet, and after 10 days, it's enough for them to completely change. It is not a long, drawn-out affair. When you want to start changing it, you see rapid improvement in your health. But many times I've got DVDs, I've got talks on, I've listened to many type of people. They're really reversing diabetes all the time. It's got to do with the diet. Now, heart disease. The incidence of death from heart disease is 17 times higher among American men as it is among Chinese. 17 times. A metabolic study in humans show that animal protein raises blood cholesterol, a major risk factor for heart disease. More than that, the much more feared saturated fat. This means that, in effect, lean meats may be just as damaging to your cholesterol levels as bacon. Autoimmune diseases. Multiple sclerosis, Graves' disease, rheumatoid arthritis, vitiligo, lupus, etc. MS patients that had a low-fat diet, no meat or dairy, during the early stages of their disease, about 95% remained mildly disabled for 30 years. In contrast, 80% of MS patients on a poor diet, high in saturated fats, died of MS. I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine, Karen, who when she was in her 30s, she's about my age, but when she was in her 30s, she was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. And she also said she had lupus as well. And she, at that stage, her speech was slurred. She had to walk with a leg brace and a walking stick because her foot kept dropping, and she had no bladder control. She knew her prognosis wasn't too good. She was a nurse, and she knew that if she had to go in to be looked after, she said it would be pretty much downhill from there on. So she decided to try to do what she can to help herself. She thought she searched around. She actually tried herbs. She went and she did a herbal course. But she actually went to somebody's house and she picked up a book called The Ministry of Healing. And she opened up this book and she looked at it and she just looked at it and she said, oh. And it talked about the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment. And she read this paragraph and it just resonated with her. If I may but touch his garment, I shall be made whole. It was a poor woman who spoke these words, a woman who for 12 years had suffered from a disease that made her life a burden. And Karen thought, oh, I've had MS for 12 years. She read on. She had spent all her means upon physicians and remedies only to be pronounced incurable. And she said, that was me. Then it went on. But as she heard of the great healer, her hopes revived. She thought, if only I could get near enough to speak to him, I might be healed. And she said to this person, she said, can I borrow this book? And they said, yes, you can borrow it on the condition you read it. Oh, she said, I'll read it. She was a reader. She is a reader. So she took it home and she started reading it. And she looked through it and she found what I taught last week, the 8 laws of health. She started to implement them. Now, she was somebody, she couldn't really exercise. So what she said she used to do, she'd walk down the hallway of a house and she'd hold on to the walls as she walked so she wouldn't fall over because she was falling over everywhere. And so she decided, and she said she got a daughter to throw a cushion in the lounge room to her so she would catch the cushion. And gradually she got better and better. And it took her about 3 years, 2 or 3 years, I can't remember at the time, she was symptom-free. But she decided to go to a family dinner. And they said to her, oh, would you like some she thought soy ice cream. She said, would you like a scoop of soy ice cream on your sweet? And at that stage, she said yes. And she said no way would she eat it now because it's processed. You know, there's a lot of stuff in that which is not very healthy for us. But at that stage, she was eating it. So she had it. Within about 3 hours, she noticed her speech was starting to slur again. She noticed her foot. She couldn't lift her foot properly. And she went back and she said, what have I done? What's different? What have I done? She said, am I getting my MS back again? And then she worked out it was the scoop of dairy ice cream, which she found out it was dairy ice cream that was given to her. 1 scoop of dairy ice cream said it took her 10 to 14 days to get that out of her system. She found out that everybody, when she was doing her research, all the people who got better from MS, all of them went off milk. And later on she found it was meat too. But they all went off milk. Critical. And I'm just thinking of all those people you know who've got MS, how many of them would have, even if they don't have a lot of milk, how many would have maybe a cup of coffee with a little bit of milk in it? Just a little bit every day is enough. You will never get better. Your symptoms will never get better. And I've often remembered, I keep remembering. Now, Karen actually has written a book about this, her journey. I've met another woman she's helped. And this other woman, exactly the same. She's symptom-free. And they've lived mildly disabled for 30 years. She said, yeah, very few things happen. She said she still finds it very difficult to step onto an escalator. She loses her balance. It's balance with her. And sometimes when she gets up out of a chair, she's just learned to compensate how to do it. but she's still got a few minor things that have not healed properly, but she's lived mildly disabled for all these years. And that's the difference. And she said, but you see, as I said, those MS patients on a poor diet, high in saturated fats, died of MS. Now, I've actually got some of these books here. They're free. If you'd like to pick one up on the way out, you're welcome just to take one of them. And you can read what she read through there. So, very interesting. She said that this is her most favourite book. She said and she's got a better quality than this one. She's got a hardcover one, and she just says she's got it underlined. And that's the same with mine. I've got mine at home is actually falling apart. It's been so well used. And it's just, there's so much information about diet and health. It's a spiritual book, but the information is so relevant. And once you see it, you say, this is it, true healing. This is it. So on your way out, Nola's got some books down on the table. Just grab one and just take them. Back to China study, osteoporosis. Countries with the highest rate of dairy consumption have the highest rates of osteoporosis. And this disease is linked to animal protein. To neutralise the uric acid in the body, calcium is released from the bone. Okay, kidney stones. When animal protein is eaten, the concentration of calcium oxalate in the urine sharply increases. And under long-term assault from increased calcium and oxalate, kidney stones may result. Macular degeneration. Finding studies showed that 70 to 88% of blindness caused by macular degeneration can be prevented if the right foods are eaten and by avoiding animal foods. Iron. Chinese get their iron from plant sources and have double the iron intake than Americans. Excess iron intake from meat encourages free radical damage, which in turn leads to higher risk of heart attack. A Harvard study showed that increased iron from vegetables, on the other hand, poses no risk at all to our heart. Now, what about organic foods? We cannot assume that the only problem with meat, milk and eggs are the antibiotics and hormones that are pumped into the animals. Animals are diseased. Now, I haven't even touched on that particular aspect in this talk. I believe animals out there are very, very diseased. But what about organic animal foods? The real danger of all animal products are the nutrient imbalances they cause, regardless whether there are any chemicals present or not. Organic meat may be marginally healthier, but it is still not a safe choice. Now, putting it all together, the rates of liver cancer in China were very high, primarily because of chronic infection with hepatitis B virus. Blood cholesterol plays a key role. Liver cancer is strongly associated with increased blood cholesterol. But this is the essence of it. The virus provides the gun, bad nutrition pulls the trigger. In summary, Dr. Campbell found that all the degenerative diseases were diseases of affluence. For example, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, cancers, autoimmune disease, MS, cataracts, osteoporosis. They are all linked to animal protein. And small intakes of animal products were associated with significant increases in chronic degenerative diseases. The greater percentage of plant foods in our diet, the less chance of getting these diseases. The more you substitute plant foods for animal foods, the healthier you are likely to be. Now, the cancer industry assume that cancer is a genetic disease and they want to create a chemical that stops cancer growth. And we know that that's called chemotherapy. Yet cancers can be reversed quite quickly by changing the type of protein that you can consume. He found it over and over again. Remember, it was in those first, initially in the rats, and then in the people studies as well. Now, this is a particular DVD. I actually bought it off the internet. That's something that it's based on the China study. There's a DVD out called Forks Over Knives. You can fight disease by changing what you eat. And you can avoid going under a surgeon's knife. Researchers explore the possibility that people changing their diets from animal-based, plant-based can help eliminate or control diabetes like cancer and control diseases like cancer and diabetes. So that's a good DVD to watch, Forks Over Knives. Now there's also one, I was told about this last time. They said, have you seen this YouTube clip between Dr. Walter Veith, V-E-I-T-H, and Dr. Colin Campbell? And that, if you want to take a photo of it, you will find, if you put in the search engine between Walter Veith and Colin Campbell, you'll find it quite easily. I found it quite easily, but that is the actual link down there in the yellow. But now Walter Veith is a very interesting, he's a professor and he's a doctor as well too, but he's a South African. And he has actually worked at the university in South Africa for years. And his story is absolutely incredible. Some of you may have heard about it, but is absolutely incredible. But he has actually decided to do some studies in South Africa and on the same sort of thing that Dr. Colin Campbell did. And when you hear this interview, it's like Colin Campbell didn't realise his work that he was doing in South Africa. And Dr. Veith had conducted his experiments more on osteoporosis and milk. And he said over and over again, it was always the same. And he did it on monkeys and on sheep and on, I've forgotten all the animals. Sheep and monkeys. I can't remember what the other animals that they were on. But they showed the same thing. It was the animal protein in the diet. They also used fish protein in the diet that did the same. But that's worthwhile to watch that DVD or that YouTube clip, because it's really interesting. It tells a lot of detail. And Dr. Veith talks about how you have an animal-based diet, you need a lot of hydrochloric acid in your stomach. But as you change your diet, your hydrochloric acid in your stomach doesn't have to be as low. He said if you're going to be a vegetarian, you need like hydrochloric acid of maybe 4 point something. I can't remember the exact number. But he said if you're a meat eater, it has to drop down to 3 point something. And if you eat eggs, it has to drop down to 1 point something. Absolutely incredible. So this is the information. And it's worthwhile you listening to that, because I found it very enlightening. Obviously, because it just works on what with Colin Campbell, but because I'd never heard it before, I thought, oh yes, that's great information. Now, I just want to remind you, if you wanted to get this information is in the newsletter, go online. You can download all these newsletters. For a lot of there's loads and loads of information there. And here is my email, my website, Facebook and YouTube. So that's them. Now, that's it. Has anyone got any questions about that particular talk? You have one over here, yes? We need a microphone though.
So how long does it take for the body to recognise a change in the diet?
Doesn't take long at all. I mean, obviously, what are you doing? If you just want to make small changes, you won't be as dramatic. But a lot of people who go away, they maybe decide to go to a health clinic and they go completely on a new a new diet. They'd learn to drink lots of water, because if you drink lots of water, you'll flush all those toxins out. Look, it'll be quickly. A lot of people can see changes within a couple of weeks. Not necessarily everybody's going to do the same, but you can reverse a lot of things. You can get your levels down quite quickly. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, just...
Related to this.
Yes, okay, just hold... Yes.
I have a guy who cut his finger off and has, the pain from it. What would you recommend he put on that finger? As far as a poultice, perhaps, or I don't know.
Cut it completely off?
Cut it off, so it's there. But he has this tremendous pain all the time.
How long ago did he cut it off?
About 3 years ago. 3 years ago.
I really can't tell you offhand. I would say, look, I would try rubbing castor oil in there. Castor oil is a very good pain relief, but phantom pain is something which, it's a lot deeper than something like that. Yeah. There's another question.
Seems to be a lot of information about MS. Have you come across, Kaye, anything like to do with the China study or anything else to do with muscular dystrophy?
Similar sort of thing. You see, it's the same diet. It's the same thing. Remember, it was autoimmune disease. Muscular dystrophy is the autoimmune disease. Sorry.
A lot of people are saying that it's genetic. And I know I've got quite a few family members that have got it, and the specialists that they've gone to said you can't do anything about it.
Well, knowing what Dr. Colin Campbell said, I would give this a chance. I would give this a go, because remember, it's viral cancers. It's changing that. You remember the one that they said that the virus inserts and changes the DNA? I would believe that a vegetarian diet would help, but look, I can't tell you exactly.
So you haven't come across any information?
No.
Okay.
I just know about Karen and with her MS, and she was and we were quite, I talked to her a lot about this, and she was showing me, and she showed me a book, and if anybody wants that book, just contact me, and I can give you the contact details for it. But it's a similar sort of thing. Look, there is so much out there, so many diseases out there. I have no idea about a lot of them. I do know that when you bring your body back to optimum health, your body is able to fight these diseases. That's what I believe. So once you get yourself back onto homeostasis, your body does the fighting of the disease. It's not that you're doing something dramatic you're changing something and you're just doing that. No, it's your body is going to give you your healing. Any other questions? Yes?
I just have a comment on when someone cuts your finger off or something like that. I know of evidence of people that they found that when a man had cut his end of his finger off, normally that wouldn't grow. But what they did is they put a bandage saturated in aloe vera, and they kept it wet all the time, and it grew back completely. And that happened. No. There's a bit more to the story. They found with other people who did it, they let it if you let it set, and then you do it, it doesn't tend to work. But I don't know. It depends on how persistent you are, doesn't it? I don't know. But certainly, if you got it when it's just been done and you just put the aloe vera, it's been proved it can grow back 100%. 100%, like it's gone and it regrows. So there's evidence of that. But being 3 years like your case, it might be too late. But there may be other things that would help still. by doing things like that. Like with the castor oil, is incredible how it penetrates and goes deep in there. And if he maybe was prepared to just do it saturated. But another thing that for pain, if you've got pain, is doing the hot cold treatment that Kaye was talking about, which is hydrotherapy. It's amazing how that really works, because it gets the blood into there and takes out whatever's causing that.
So one more question back here.
It's not actually a question. I have also had my finger fixed up with a circular saw, so anyone asked you to hang on to anything, say no. For me, with numbing pain, I found hemp seed oil to be very good. And there was an incident when I was in hospital that someone had lost their thumb, I think it was, and were having phantom pains. They ended up using a mirror. So they put their good hand in the box with the mirror, and you can see that your hand's okay. The other one's okay, because you can see both hands. And then once you pull it out, your mind sort of catches on that it is okay. And the pain can actually dissipate or disappear.
Thank you. I love hearing things like that, because we're all learning, aren't we? Yeah. Here's one more question over here.
Okay, mine's a little story about my daughter who was 4 years old, and she got her finger caught in a deck chair when it was, and she severed her ring finger. Now, it was when we got to the hospital, they couldn't fix it. They just said, no, we're just operating on a little boy who's cut his ear off first, so she'll just have to wait. This doctor put all these stitches and things in her finger and said to me, oh, sure. I said, don't let her lose a finger. And he says, well, what we'll do, he says, we'll just stitch it back on, but she'll never have any feeling in it. She'll never be able to cut the nail because it sort of rips right through the length of the finger. Now, Karina still has her finger to this day, waiting for this wedding ring to be put on her finger. And all that we did was use natural remedies and pray about it. And they told us not to take the bandage off. And we took the bandage off and we bathed it in warm, salty water and then wrapped it up again. When we went to the doctors and they undone the bandage and they looked at her hand, this 4-year-old said, Doctor, the nurse nearly fainted with what she saw. She could not believe. The doctor just put the cloth over her hand and says, take her home, Beryl, and do what you've been doing. Now, all that we did was pray about it and that hand. And with the natural remedies that we used, that little finger grew back. We cut the nail about a month later because her nail was growing. She still has the slightest bump. She can still play the keyboard and the organ and piano. She can still play the violin with it. Wow. She's got all her faculties with it. Now, the most important thing is like the gentleman said about the aloe vera. Oh, yeah. We use that and just massage that into
aloe
the
vera,
hand.
yeah.
Aloe vera, yeah.
Remember, I also told you another one to use is a mixture of honey and wheat germ oil and comfrey powder. That will regrow it as well too.
Yeah, well, she used to have comfrey. We used to cut up comfrey and put it in the food, so that would have helped her too. But that's just, the aloe vera did stop the pain. She just never cried. She never.
Okay.
She had 15 stitches in that little tiny thing.
Yep. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I've got something else for you. I've got the truth about milk. This is much shorter. This is not as long as the other one. But I wanted to share with you some of the things about milk. Now, this is by Dr. William Ellis, an osteopathic surgeon who researched milk and its related products for 42 years. Milk causes all sorts of health problems, from diarrhea and asthma to arthritis and anemia. Most milk byproducts like cream or cheese or yogurt are just harmful. Okay, now look at all these things. Are they healthy? Well, let's go on. I've got this book at home called Don't Drink Your Milk, okay? But he's head of St John's Hopkins Medical and Surgery Centre for 10 years. He's authored 300 academic papers and 20 books. One was of the most vocal advocates of the dangers of cow's milk. Okay, now he says milk is contributing factor in constipation, chronic fatigue, arthritis, headaches, muscle cramps, obesity, allergies and heart problems. Many people who suffer from underdiagnosed lactose intolerance, and well over half the world's population is lactose intolerant. Now, why does milk cause heart problems? Cow's milk has an enzyme called xanthine oxidase, or XO. This causes heart problems by attacking the heart's arteries. From 71 to 74, patients with angina pectoris and atherosclerosis were studied. All the patients were taken off milk and given folic acid and ascorbic acid, both which combat the action of XO. The results were dramatic. Chest pains decreased, the symptoms lessened, and patients made a great improvement. Now, why does milk cause heart problems? This problem only occurs when drinking homogenized milk. When unhomogenized milk is consumed, the body excretes the XO. That's that enzyme. The small homogenized particles are absorbed into the bloodstream and attack heart, artery, and tissue. Why does milk cause heart problems? And the other reason is it leads to overweight, problems, and obesity. Each glass of milk has 165 calories. Cheese is much more. Concentrated, it takes about 5 litres of milk to make 500 grams of cheese. Now, why does cheese cause headaches? Tyramin, a protein in cheese, causes headaches. I've practiced doing this and I've forgotten how to say. Phenylethylamine, found in many cheeses, causes migraines. So cheese is very known to cause migraines and also to constipate. Why? Chronic fatigue, muscle cramps, constipation, etc. Adults who use milk products do not absorb nutrients well. There's 2 reasons why. Milk and milk products have the ability to neutralise hydrochloric acid. So the stomach has to work harder to produce enough hydrochloric acid to digest your food. Eventually, hydrochloric acid producing glands in the stomach break down. Now, why chronic fatigue, muscle cramps? Well, this is the second reason. It generates excess mucus in the intestines, sinus and lungs. This excess mucus hardens and forms a coating on the inner lining that is relatively impermeable to nutrients. Poor absorption, chronic fatigue, constipation, respiratory ailments, etc. Mucus is sticky. Food sticks to the excessive mucus. Consequently, it is hard to get rid of stools. They adhere to the intestinal wall. And drinking lots of milk results in a stuffy nose or chest congestion. Be extra careful when you have a stuffy nose or cold, meaning that if you have a stuffy nose or cold and you drink milk, it'll just make it worse. Allergies. 25% of children fed cow's milk before 6 months will develop 1 or more allergies. And milk is the number 1 cause of an allergy. 2 reasons: not enough hydrochloric acid, and proteins don't digest properly. And this partially digested protein enters the bloodstream and irritate the tissues, and you get hives, skin rashes, and other allergies. What about calcium? Because everybody says, well, you need milk for your calcium. Well, there is no question that milk is high in calcium. But humans are not able to metabolize this properly. Why? Only 25% of the calcium in cow's milk is absorbed by the body because high phosphorus present in cow's milk makes calcium absorption more difficult. And cow's milk is very acid. And like all animal protein, milk acidifies the body pH, which triggers a biological correction. Calcium is drawn from the bones to neutralize this acid. And once calcium is pulled out of the bones, it leaves the body via the urine, so our bodies have a calcium deficit. And statistics show that countries with the lowest consumption of dairy products also have the lowest fracture incidence in their population. Pasteurised versus raw milk. Now, pasteurised milk has 25% less of the B vitamins and 50% less of vitamin C than unpasteurised milk, and has significantly less minerals and enzymes. It destroys antibodies in milk that protect it against bacteria, for it has approximately 40 times more bacteria than in raw milk. So who wouldn't have thought that your homogenised milk is worse for you with bacteria? Yet raw milk produced many of the same problems as pasteurised milk, for example, as does yogurt. Sterilisation would require the milk to be taken to 100 degrees centigrade, but pasteurising heats it to 71 and holds it for 15 seconds. It will merely reduce the number of potentially infectious germs, but does not eliminate them. Now, more on pasteurisation. Many bacteria and viruses pass the pasteurisation process. Some viruses that have survived the pasteurisation process are foot and mouth, Maloney leukemia, Rous sarcoma, Rasher leukemia, bovine papilloma. All of these could be destroyed by boiling, but not simply by pasteurising. And more epidemics are put down to salmonella, food poisoning, strep, brucellosis, Q fever, Yersinia, plus more. Known contaminants in milk. The cow's lunch from yesterday. Those of you who know about dairy farmers, you know you've got to be very careful what you put your cows on to feed, because it'll taint the milk. You can taste it in the milk. And so bacteria, viruses, prions. Now, prions are altered proteins, which are responsible for mad cow disease. Antibiotics given to livestock to prevent infection and boost growth, hormones and your pesticides. And it contains hormones. Cow's milk contains hormones secreted from the pituitary gland of the cows. These are powerful growth hormones designed to raise a calf to a large cow at maturity. And these hormones are not destroyed by processing. Do you know, when I was a young girl, my parents had a dairy farm. Later, they changed it to a poultry farm, and they changed their income source. But when it was a dairy farm, I remember the cows, and I remember you coming in and the cow would get in calf, they would dry the calf off, but they don't do that now. This was stunned me, is that they just dry a cow off only a few weeks before they're ready to have a calf. So all through that cow's pregnancy, you got hormones coming through and racing through that cow's body. Guess where those hormones? They go into the milk. We've got so many health problems in our world today, and we've got to look at all the different ways that we're getting different. Too many people, like, why are all the young children, why are the young girls, their maturity levels are getting younger and younger and younger? I said earlier in the China study talk about how the young girls are getting, like it's better to get your periods much later. But what's the average age of puberty now? 11, 12? In some places it's even younger. But, I think back to me. When I was a teenager, I was skinny, and I think there was no meat on me, but I think I was about 14 before I got my period. Yeah, that was probably pretty normal. But milk products are in many of your foods. Remember that milk products are found in many bakery products, protein powders. Even a teaspoon of can cause a problem which could take 4 days to get over. By using dairy cream reduces the amount of oxygen that reaches the brain by 30%. And I tell you, I don't know about you, but I need all the oxygen I can get up there. 35% reduction of oxygen is necessary to produce malignant cells after a heavy fat meal. 9 to 12 hours before clumping reverses and 72 hours before returning to normal. So people are getting this when if you have a high-fat meal. Now, major concerns related to milk: allergies, iron deficiency anemia, lowered intelligences, milk sensitivities, enlarged adenoids and tonsils, body odour, colic in breastfed babies, juvenile diabetes, acne, rheumatoid arthritis, dental decay, infectious diseases, colds, flu, sinusitis, ear aches and tummy aches. One more I could add in there is asthma. You know, my mother was very, very severe asthmatic. I can remember all her adult life. She was always suffering from asthma, and she just learned to live with it. It was not a case that, you know, sometimes she would be so bad she'd go to the hospital, but mostly she just had to live with it. But, you know, as I learned all this, and I found that one of the most critical things she should have been off is milk. But she never knew that. I didn't know that those years. I mean, we're learning a lot of stuff now, but, you know, going back, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have this information out. And I think I told you last week that she hardly drank any water. And so that's another part of it too, because you're dehydrated. But I knew not that she had lots of milk, but I tell you what, our family, we had a lot of ice cream. That was always on the menu at our family. Just the way it was, because we had a dairy farm. We were just growing. We had all this milk, and was used in everything you could use it in. You'd make up your own butter. We had the old butter churn and all that. And it's amazing, because I still remember turning that old butter churn and making up butter. And do you know what? That butter would only keep for probably 3 days. After that, Mum would go to it and you'd smell it and it'd go rancid. And she'd throw it out.
No fridge.
Yeah, well, she used a fridge. Yeah, she used a fridge.
Don't they put salt in butter?
Oh, yeah, but you put salt in it. Yeah, but she put salt in it, but it still got rancid after about 3 days. Now, what do they put in butter nowadays that you can go into the supermarket and you can have it for months? And it's fresh. But you can't do that with homemade butter. It goes rancid. I can tell you that. I know. Okay, so in no mammalian species except for the industrialised human is milk consumption continued after weaning. So cow's milk is best for cows. So that's my little short talk on cow's milk. If that's not enough, I've got something else for you, even another short one too. This is something which I wanted to share with you because, and what do you replace your meat with? I'm telling you to replace it with whole food, plant-based diet. Don't get caught up in this. I'm going to share with you about soy protein isolate. Now, you look at some of I am so fussy. I will not buy anything with soy protein isolated. It is in many things. It is made by an industrial process, and they take soybeans, and they are usually a GMO. They are hulled, then crushed to extract the oil, and are mixed with an alkaline to remove the fibre. An acid wash separates the beans from the liquid and finally the chunky bits of the soybean. Other processes use hexane, ammonia and hydrochloric acid to produce a sponge-like texture. It is then sprayed dry, and this is your soy protein isolate. Okay, a soy bean has 40% protein, but soy protein isolate has 95%. And that is not good for our body. It is the most highly refined soy protein. It has been found to have 10 times as much aluminium as milk-based formulas and 100 times much as breast milk. So don't get caught up, just think, oh, let's substitute, let's buy soy. Now, I do use soy, but I make sure I will only have whole soy or whole soybean milk. I never buy any of the soy milk that is made on an isolate. Never. Because you're getting all these problems with it. So you need to be careful. Need to examine all of your labels. Yet it is so expensive, it is added to so many foods today. Now, soy products. An insulin growth factor is a powerful growth hormone found in the body. It stimulates normal growth, your bone growth, and diseased tissues and cancer growth. So it stimulates, it makes your body grow. It looks like insulin, just a little different. It is more powerful than insulin. Now, certain things you can do to make your insulin growth factor increase. Only children need this. It is not needed in older people. Dairy causes high insulin growth factor in people. That's the purpose of milk. Remember, it's produced rapid growth. It takes a little calf to a big cow in not very long time. That's what the milk does. It's for rapid growth. Consuming dairy makes stronger bones, but it also stimulates other cells to grow, except cancer. Animals with lower insulin growth factor 1 are healthier and live longer. That's why the little animals who are not as big actually live longer than the big animals, like dogs. One study was on adolescent girls, the other on menopausal women. Increasing milk consumption raises insulin growth factor an average of 10%. Bones grow, everything grows. You add 1 glass of milk per day. Milk does this, not the protein factor. The milk increases the insulin growth factor by 19%. But then listen to this study. They did a different study. A group of people were given 40 grams of milk protein. Their insulin growth factor increased 36%. But 40 grams of isolated soy protein, the insulin growth factor increased 69%. This growth promoter is linked to breast, prostate, lung, and colon cancer. Now, where do you find your isolated soy protein? Well, 40 grams of isolated soy protein in 2 soy patties, a soy candy bar, a soy shake. With the daily addition of isolated soy protein, a person becomes at risk for osteoporosis, kidney stones, and cancer. It is the synthetic soy foods that are of concern, and that's these. Do not get sucked into and try and think of these sort of foods to substitute meat. And you know what? Can I tell you? They taste good. You can eat these, and look, I have eaten them. If I go somewhere and somebody says, oh, here's a sausage, it's a vegetarian sausage, look, every once in a while, your body could handle that. But if you decide to substitute this with these type of things, that is what, you look on the back, soy protein isolate. And it's in so many things. It's in a lot of these bodybuilding powders, soy protein isolate. It's one of the main things in these bodybuilding programs. Yes, because it makes you grow. Remember, everything grows. But also your bones and also your cancer grows too. Your cancer cells. So you need to be careful what you substitute with, like if you are interested. That's why whole food, plant-based diet. And if you get a little bit stuck, just see me. I was actually hoping, and I'm going to just ask see if there's a show of hands. I would actually like to, the first Sunday of next month, I plan to have another talk on excitotoxins. What are excitotoxins? Well, they are flavour enhancers that are added to your food. And how do they come from? Where do they come from? And I've got quite a few other things that I've got listed. I've got lots of talks. I've got gluten and GMOs and glyphosate on the fungal link and electrosmog and the gut-brain connection and all that. There's probably about 15 talks here. But I would like to offer, if anybody would like to have once a month on a weekday at a meeting on a Tuesday or a Wednesday morning. Is anybody interested in that? Okay, Tuesday or a Wednesday morning. Has it got any preference which we'd like? Tuesday? Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday. Looks like Tuesdays have got it. Sorry about that. So what we'll do is we'll take Tuesdays, the last Tuesday in the month. Not the first one, the last Tuesday in the month. And if we just make it then, and I've got lots of things, because I want to show you also, next time I was hoping to do, on the Tuesday, one on fungal link, but I also want to show you how to do sourdough, gluten-free flatbreads that are beautiful. And if you come along, I will you can take home a culture and I'll show you how to make it. And it is not hard to do. It's one of the easiest things that I do. And it takes a little bit to work out how to do it initially, but once you see it done, you'll be fine. Once you see it done. I make this, you can make this mixture, you can make it into a loaf of bread, or you can make it into flatbread, which I tend to do, because if I make it in a loaf of bread, it just sits there. And I do admit, you make gluten-free bread, after a while it can taste like cardboard. I agree. That's why it's nicer fresh. And so when I do this flatbread, I make it fresh every time I want to use it, and I love it. You can make it, you can flatten out, and you can use it as a wrap. You can use it. I've even done it that I put like fruit through it, and it becomes like a fruit bunny sort of thing, a little bit fatter. And so you can. I use it in I cook it all the time in a sandwich press, and if I push the sandwich press down, it's thinner. If I let it come up, it's a little bit thicker. But that'll be my the last Tuesday in this month. I would do that on fungal link and also the gluten-free flatbread recipe, how to make that. Okay, so I can have it here. It's probably because there was two alternatives. If I only had a handful, I was going to move to my home. But if there's enough here, we will have it here. Okay, and that'll be on from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock on the Tuesday morning. I found the morning suits better because then you can drop, if you've got other things, you can drop kids off to school or whatever, and then you can be here by 10, and then you're not caught up after in the afternoon. Beryl has been a lot of the classes that I've run in my own home, and and I tell you what, there's sometimes I even have lunch for you, don't I? And we have lunch together, and I've got lunch prepared, which is something I think I might try too, and let you have. Pardon? It's the 31st. Okay, that'll be fine, the 31st of May. So we won't do the Sunday. I will do the Sunday as well. I will have both. Okay. I will have the Tuesday morning in the last one in May, and the Sunday, the 5th of May, 5th of June, is it? 5th of June. Okay, I will have that as well. Has everybody got that clear? Now, I've got one short clip that I want to share. Now, this is a clip which I saw on Today Tonight or something, one of the shows. It's only about 5-minute clip, but before we finish, we're going to show that. Ralph's got it ready there to start. So we will put this on and you can just watch this clip.
The industry-wide secret butchers don't want you to know about.
It's not showing
Major
up
suppliers have been caught using a special product known as meat glue to stick together scraps of meat to sell as prime cuts. But while this product has been banned overseas, there's no law prohibiting its use here. Here's Rodney Lowe's with this special investigation.
It's the meat industry's dirty secret, a way of turning the scraps too small to sell as a premium steak back into a juicy, plump eye fillet to sell for a premium price. So clever, you'll never tell. Not even an expert can.
Before, you didn't even pick that as a join, though, did you?
It doesn't even tear through the joint. A bit hard to tell, isn't it?
Butcher James Faulkner runs Queensland Natural Beef Company, an organisation dedicated to using as few additives in meat from paddock to plate as possible. But tonight, he's exposing how some parts of the industry are able to trick their customers and use whatever it takes.
Yeah. I've just got some fine diced beef and my special enzyme. I'm just going to mix it up a bit.
Why have we got the masks on?
This is dangerous. See that? Don't breathe that in.
This powder is transglutaminase enzyme, otherwise known as meat glue. Meat glues come in a number of forms, some produced by cultivating bacteria, the others, the primary ingredient comes from the blood plasma of pigs and cattle, specifically the coagulant which causes blood to clot. In the food industry, it has amazing properties.
So just got a little bit here, about a teaspoonful.
Yep.
Just over the top like that. And with our gloves on, of course, we mix it up.
Then roll it in plastic film and refrigerate. 6 hours later, you have a solid piece of meat.
And essentially, you've got a reborn, rebirthed eye fillet.
More or less, yeah.
Ours uncooked is easy to spot the difference, but cooked is another story.
Okay, so the meat glue one is on the right, and the real McCoy is on the left.
And it's not just beef. Pork, lamb, fish and chicken are all stuck back together using this glue.
It looks like one piece of chicken.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yep.
But hard to tell, isn't it?
Particularly that.
On the grill, it's even harder to pick.
So that's the real McCoy. Give this a burl. Nice and tender, nicely salted. All right, let's go for the meat glue. I can't tell the difference.
Pretty good, but potentially dangerous.
I've sort of got two concerns. One that is well publicised, which is misleading people. The other area is the microbial side.
It's why the European Union moved to ban meat glue in May last year. Microbiologist Glenn Pinner.
If this food is sold or represented as a solid piece of steak and you cook it rare, you're really leaving yourself open to get food poisoning.
Once you glue two pieces together, it's difficult to cook thoroughly those parts that were on the outside but are now on the inside.
The amount of bacteria on a steak that has been put together with meat glue is hundreds of times higher.
We had no idea how guarded a secret this was until we started contacting restaurateurs and butchers to ask them about the use of meat glue. Many of them didn't want to speak for fear of upsetting their suppliers, creating bad blood in an industry that has become very clever at using this product.
Are you just shaking your head?
A little bit. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
This cube roll we bought from a wholesaler that produces stuck-together steaks en masse. Their effort's so good, James, our butcher, couldn't tell even when it was raw. It's even harder in the restaurant, which are some of the biggest users of glued meat. And chances are, unless you're a vegetarian, you're eating it on a regular basis. But with current labelling laws, neither butchers nor your local eatery have to tell you you're eating chicken glued together with cow's blood or beef held together by pig. It's the same reason they can take low-grade meat and pump it with water and flavour to make it edible.
Okay, so just after about a minute or two, we've got quite a lot of moisture out of there. And we've lost almost half a kilo.
Then the practice of selling mutton as lamb and old cow as prime cut beef. Like this. So old, a meat grader said it was only good for pet mince.
You've got yellow fat colour, really dark meat colour. It's definitely off a really old type of animal.
In New South Wales, new labelling regulations have just been introduced to help consumers choose quality meat, but it's not compulsory. So for most of us, picking a quality piece of meat is still a shot in the dark.
There you are. Anyone heard of that before? I can send you the copy of it, yeah. Pardon? Yes, it will. It'll be on this. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you are. Any other questions, any comments before we close off? Don't forget the book down the back. If you want, Nola's got these Ministry of Healing. Just take one. Just grab one if you'd like a book. You're welcome to have it. And so I look forward to seeing you then again next Thursday, 31st, on Tuesday the 31st. And then we will also do one. It'll be here. It'll be here. And some of those will also, maybe we can even do some cooking. Part of them will be not full cooking demonstrations because that's just too much. But I will show you some simple things you can make. And yeah, so part of that is going to be that. Yes?
Kaye, do you want us to let you know by text like a couple of days?
Yes, please do. Yes, please do, yeah. That would be great, yeah. I'll text you out. I think I've got, if you want to, make sure you're going to be texted to be reminded all that. Just ask Nola down there. She's my secretary. She's my sister, so I can say that, can't I? Yeah. So, yeah, she's good. So, as I said, I want to share lots with you, and I believe we have a window of opportunity for me to teach you some of these things that I've known. I don't think that things are going to go on in our country like they've been going on. We don't know what's ahead. And I have a lot of sort of like a premonitions or whatever you might call it. Just I have a feeling that there's going to be some dramatic changes and we won't have to go on. There'll be more pandemics coming along.
September.
Yeah.
They already tell everyone.
Yeah. So I believe... Yeah, I believe there will be. And so I want to share with you this. You need to know lots of information, and I want to let you know because we are being bombarded by so many different things, and we have to know it, and we share. And if you want to come along, please do. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.